Autumn 2019 arrived early in Providence, Rhode Island. Golden leaves danced in the cold wind that cut through the city's historic streets, where modern skyscrapers blended with centuries-old colonial buildings. In the upscale neighborhood of Federal Hill, known for its Italian heritage and family restaurants, a 3-story Victorian mansion stood out among the other properties. Its red bricks contrasted with dark glass windows, and a wrought iron gate protected the main entrance. Inside this imposing residence, Vincent "Vinny" Torino paced nervously through corridors of Italian marble. At 45, he commanded one of the most influential families on the East Coast, inheriting the empire built by his father in the 1980s and 1990s. His graying hair was perfectly slicked back, and his $3,000 Armani suit couldn't hide the tension that dominated his broad shoulders. "Signore Torino, your wife is asking for you," said Marco, his right-hand man, appearing at the entrance of the mahogany-lined office. The 40-year-old man, with scars on his face that told stories that would never be spoken aloud, always maintained a respectful posture before the boss. Vincent stopped walking and looked out the window facing the back garden, where a marble fountain spouted crystal-clear water. "How is she, Marco?" "Better, but still very weak. The doctor said she'll need a lot of rest." 3 weeks had passed since Isabella Torino gave birth to the twins. The delivery had been complicated, almost costing her life and the children's. Vincent still remembered the despair he felt that day at Rhode Island Hospital when the doctors emerged from the operating room with somber expressions. "The babies were born with severe cerebral palsy," Dr. Patterson had said, a white-haired man who had worked at the hospital for over 20 years. "It's a condition that affects movement and posture. They'll need special care for the rest of their lives." Vincent climbed the marble stairs leading to the second floor, his footsteps echoing through the silent corridor. The walls were decorated with original Renaissance paintings that his grandfather had brought from Sicily in the 1950s. Each piece was worth more than most houses in Providence, but at that moment, all the wealth in the world couldn't alleviate the weight he carried in his chest. He stopped in front of the master bedroom door and took a deep breath before entering. Isabella was lying in the king-size bed, surrounded by silk pillows. Her brown hair was spread across the pillow, and her skin still maintained the pallor of recent days. Beside the bed, 2 mahogany cribs housed the twins, Antonio and Giuseppe, names chosen in honor of the family's great-grandfathers. "How are you feeling, amore?" Vincent asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and taking his wife's delicate hand. Isabella smiled weakly. "Better, but I'm worried about them, Vincent. The doctors said they'll need constant physical therapy, occupational therapy. How are we going to do this?" Vincent looked at the cribs. Antonio, the older by 3 minutes, slept peacefully, but his small fists were contracted in a way that didn't seem natural. Giuseppe was awake, his bright blue eyes looking at the ceiling, but his movements were limited and uncoordinated. "We'll hire the best specialists in the country," said Vincent, his voice loaded with determination. "Money is no problem. They'll have everything they need. It's not just about money, Vincent. They'll need love, patience, constant dedication. I'm still recovering and you have your business to take care of." Vincent knew she was right. His business included overseeing construction operations that laundered money, managing a network of underground casinos, and maintaining peace between rival families operating between Boston and New York. It wasn't exactly the type of work that allowed flexible schedules for caring for children with special needs. "We'll find a solution," he said, kissing Isabella's forehead. "We always do." That afternoon, Vincent was in his ground floor office when Marco knocked on the door. The environment was a mixture of elegance and intimidation. Shelves full of classic books, a safe built into the wall behind a painting of Saint Gennaro, and an oak desk where Vincent conducted both legitimate business and those he preferred to keep away from the eyes of the law. "Boss, there's a woman here wanting to talk to you about work," said Marco. "Says she heard you're needing someone to take care of the children." Vincent frowned. How did she know that? We didn't publish anything anywhere. Apparently, Mrs. Torino mentioned to the hospital nurse that you'd need help. The nurse knows this woman and recommended her. What kind of person is she? Marco consulted a small notebook. Name is Grace Washington. 42 years old, lives in Southside. Worked as a nurse for 15 years before specializing in childcare. Has experience with children with special needs. Vincent hesitated. Southside was predominantly African American, a part of the city his family rarely frequented, not out of declared prejudice, but simply because their worlds didn't cross. The Torino family business concentrated on Federal Hill and the more prosperous areas of the city. Does she have references? Several. Worked for 3 families in the last 5 years. All speak very highly of her. Vincent looked out the window, observing the leaves that continued to fall in the garden. The truth was, they desperately needed help. Isabella was still recovering, and he had no idea how to care for children with cerebral palsy. His own parents had died in a car accident when he was 25, and Isabella was an only child of already deceased parents. "Send her in," he said finally. A few minutes later, Marco returned, accompanied by a woman who immediately caught Vincent's attention. Grace Washington was tall, about 5'7", with firm shoulders that suggested physical strength. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and she wore a navy blue business suit that, while simple, was impeccably pressed. Her brown eyes were direct and confident, showing no intimidation at being in the presence of a man she knew was feared throughout the region. "Mr. Torino," she said, extending her hand firmly. "I'm Grace Washington. Thank you for seeing me." Vincent shook her hand, noting that the grip was firm and secure. "Please sit down. Marco told me you have experience with children with special needs." Grace sat in the leather chair in front of the desk, keeping her back straight. "Yes, sir. I worked as a pediatric nurse at a Rhode Island hospital for 15 years before specializing in home care. In the last 5 years, I've cared exclusively for children with cerebral palsy, autism, and other conditions that require special attention." "Why did you leave the hospital?" "I realized I could make more of a difference working directly with families. In the hospital, you care for the child for a few hours or days. At home, you can really follow the development, create personalized routines, work with the whole family to ensure the best possible care." Vincent studied her face, looking for signs of nervousness or dishonesty. He found none. "Do you know who I am, Mrs. Washington?" Grace looked at him directly. "I know you're an influential businessman in Providence. I know your family has a reputation in the city, and I know you've just become the father of twins who will need a lot of love and specialized care." The answer surprised him. She hadn't denied knowing his reputation, but she also hadn't shown judgment or fear. "And that doesn't bother you?" "Mr. Torino, I grew up in Southside. I've seen everything in my life. I learned that people are more complex than they appear on the surface. What matters to me is that you want the best for your children. That's what I'm here to offer." Vincent leaned back in his chair, impressed by her frankness. "Tell me about your specific experience with cerebral palsy." Grace opened a folder she had brought with her. "I've cared for 3 children with different degrees of cerebral palsy. Tommy Rodriguez, who's now 8 and can walk with the aid of a walker. Sarah Chen, who developed communication skills through assistive devices. And Michael O'Brien, who despite physical limitations, is excelling academically at a specialized school." She showed photos of the children and recommendation letters from the families. Vincent quickly read the documents, noting the consistent praise for Grace's dedication, patience, and technical knowledge. "What would be your approach with my children?" "First, I'd need to assess the specific degree of each one's paralysis. Each child is unique, even twins. Then, I'd develop an early stimulation program that would include daily physical therapy, motor coordination exercises, sensory stimuli, and as they grow, adapted educational activities." Grace spoke for another 20 minutes about rehabilitation techniques, specialized equipment, and the importance of family involvement in the development process. Vincent was impressed with her technical knowledge, but even more with the genuine passion she demonstrated when talking about the work. "Mrs. Washington, I need to be direct with you. My life isn't conventional. There are aspects of my business that can bring complications. Would you be comfortable working in this environment?" Grace looked him in the eyes. Mr. Torino, I worked in hospital emergencies for 15 years. I saw violence, drugs, destroyed families, abandoned children. I learned that my job isn't to judge circumstances, but to care for the children who need me. If you can guarantee that your children will be safe and that I can do my work without interference, then I see no problem. Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. What would be your salary? $80,000 a year plus health benefits. I work Monday through Friday, 7 in the morning to 7 at night. Weekends only in emergencies. It was more than Vincent paid some of his men, but he didn't hesitate. Accepted. When can you start? Tomorrow if you want. But I'd like to meet your wife and the babies first, to start assessing their specific needs. Vincent stood up and extended his hand again. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Washington. As Grace went upstairs to meet Isabella and the twins, Vincent remained in his office looking out the window. For the first time since his children's birth, he felt that maybe there was light at the end of the tunnel. He didn't yet know how this decision would change not only his children's lives, but the entire dynamics of his family and even his perspective on the world around him. Outside, the leaves continued to fall, but Vincent no longer saw just the end of a season. He saw the beginning of something new, something he couldn't yet define completely, but that brought with it a sense of possibility he hadn't felt in a long time. The first chapter of Grace Washington's journey in the Torino house was just beginning, and none of them could imagine how this unlikely union would transform their lives in ways they had never considered possible. The next morning arrived with a dense fog that covered Providence like a gray blanket. Grace Washington parked her 2015 Honda Civic in front of the Torino mansion gate at exactly 7 o'clock. She had spent the previous night researching cerebral palsy in twins, reviewing her notes, and preparing a list of equipment and supplies that would be needed. She wore a light blue medical uniform she had bought specifically for this job, along with comfortable white shoes that would allow long hours on her feet. In her hands, she carried a brown leather bag containing basic assessment instruments, therapeutic toys, and a notebook where she would record the children's daily progress. Marco received her at the gate, his face still carrying the natural distrust of someone who had spent decades protecting the Torino family. Good morning, Mrs. Washington. The boss is waiting for you in the office. Thank you, Marco. Can I leave my car here? Of course. Starting today, you have a reserved spot in the side garage. Grace followed Marco through the front garden, noticing details of the property she hadn't observed the day before. Carefully pruned rose bushes lined the stone path, and a statue of St. Francis of Assisi was positioned near the main entrance. It was evident that despite the family's dark reputation, there was a genuine appreciation for beauty and tradition. Vincent awaited her at the main door, wearing a gray cashmere sweater and dress pants. His hair was slightly disheveled, suggesting he had spent a restless night. Good morning, Mrs. Washington. Did you sleep well? Yes, thank you. And you? How are the babies? Vincent sighed, running his hand through his hair. Giuseppe spent the night crying. Isabella barely got any sleep. We tried everything. Bottle, diaper change, lullabies, but nothing worked. Grace nodded, recognizing a common pattern. Babies with cerebral palsy often have difficulties regulating sleep. It could be physical discomfort, digestive problems, or simply hypersensitivity to stimuli. We'll figure out what's bothering him. They went up to the second floor, where Isabella was sitting in an armchair beside the cribs, rocking Giuseppe in her arms. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, and she seemed on the verge of tears. Isabella, this is Grace Washington, the nurse we hired, said Vincent, approaching his wife. Isabella looked at Grace with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Sorry for my appearance. It was a very difficult night. You don't need to apologize, Mrs. Torino. May I? Grace extended her arms, indicating she'd like to hold Giuseppe. Isabella hesitated for a moment before handing over the baby. Grace received him with smooth and secure movements, immediately noticing the rigidity in his small muscles and the way he arched his back. He's experiencing muscle discomfort, said Grace, gently examining the baby's arms and legs. It's common in children with cerebral palsy. The muscles become tense and contracted, causing pain. Grace began making gentle stretching movements with Giuseppe's arms, speaking to him in a low, melodious voice. "Hi, little prince. Let's relieve this tension, okay?" To Vincent and Isabella's surprise, Giuseppe stopped crying almost immediately, his blue eyes fixed on Grace's face, and for the first time since birth, he seemed truly relaxed. "How did you do that?" Isabella asked, incredulous. "Experience and technique, but mainly, he felt that I understand what he's going through." Grace continued the gentle exercises, explaining each movement. Children with cerebral palsy are very sensitive to touch and the energy of people around them. They perceive when someone is nervous or insecure. Vincent watched in silence, fascinated by the transformation he was witnessing. Giuseppe had not only stopped crying, but seemed genuinely comfortable in Grace's arms. "What about Antonio?" Isabella asked, looking at the other crib where the twins slept peacefully. Grace approached and observed Antonio for a few minutes. "He seems to have a different degree of paralysis. Less muscle rigidity, but probably more coordination difficulties. I'll need a few days to make a complete assessment of both." For the next 2 hours, Grace worked with the twins while explaining to Vincent and Isabella what she was doing and why. She demonstrated therapeutic massage techniques, proper positioning for feeding, and signs that indicated discomfort or specific needs. "The key is establishing a consistent routine," explained Grace, while feeding Antonio with a special bottle that allowed better flow control. Children with cerebral palsy benefit enormously from predictability. They need to know what to expect. Isabella, who had been tense since Grace's arrival, began to relax as she saw the results of the nurse's work. "Can you teach us to do this?" "Of course. Actually, it's essential that you learn. I'll be here during the day, but you're the parents. The more involved you are in daily care, the better the children's development will be." Vincent, who had remained mostly observing, finally spoke. "Mrs. Washington, I need to go out for some appointments. Will you be okay here with Isabella?" "Perfectly. Actually, it would be good if I could spend some time alone with Mrs. Torino and the babies. I need to understand the family dynamics and each one's specific needs." After Vincent left, Isabella and Grace sat in the living room adjacent to the bedroom where they could keep the cribs in sight. The decoration was elegant but welcoming, with cream leather sofas and a marble fireplace that wasn't lit. "Can I ask a personal question?" Isabella said, her hands nervously smoothing her dress skirt. "Of course. Do you have children?" Grace smiled, but there was a shadow of sadness in her eyes. "I had one. My son Marcus died at 16. Leukemia." Isabella brought her hand to her mouth. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have asked." "No, it's okay. It's part of who I am and why I do this work." Grace looked towards the cribs. "Marcus was also born with challenges. Not cerebral palsy, but heart problems that required multiple surgeries. I learned a lot about special care taking care of him. It must have been very difficult." "It was, but it also taught me that every day is precious, that love has no limits when it comes to our children, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as challenges." Isabella was silent for a moment, processing Grace's words. "I'm afraid," she finally admitted. "Afraid of not being a good mother to them, of not knowing how to help them. That fear is normal, and actually it's a good sign. It means you care deeply. But I can guarantee you one thing. You're already a good mother. I saw how you look at them, how you worry. The rest we can teach." During the rest of the morning, Grace worked with Isabella, teaching her basic care and stimulation techniques. She showed how to position the babies to reduce muscle tension, how to recognize signs of discomfort, and how to incorporate therapeutic exercises into daily activities. "Feeding is especially important," explained Grace, demonstrating how to hold Giuseppe to minimize reflux. "Children with cerebral palsy often have difficulty swallowing, so we need to be very careful with food consistency and feeding speed." Isabella absorbed every piece of information like a sponge, asking detailed questions and practicing each technique until she felt confident. Grace was impressed with her dedication and how quickly she learned. At noon, Vincent returned. accompanied by a man Grace didn't recognize. He was younger than Vincent, perhaps in his late 30s, with dark hair and a suit that seemed to have cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Grace, this is my brother, Michael Torino," said Vincent. "Michael, this is Mrs. Washington, the nurse we hired to take care of the twins." Michael extended his hand, but Grace perceived a coldness in his eyes that wasn't present in Vincent. "Pleasure to meet you. Vincent told me about your special situation." "Special situation," Grace repeated, keeping her voice neutral. "Well, you know, an outsider taking care of family children. It's a bit unusual for us." Grace felt the tension in the air but maintained her composure. "Mr. Torino, my job is to take care of Antonio and Giuseppe. Nothing more, nothing less. I hope that's not a problem." Vincent intervened quickly. "It's no problem at all, Michael. Grace has already proven her worth this morning. The boys are calmer than they've been since they were born." Michael looked at the cribs, where both babies slept peacefully. "Impressive," he said, but his tone suggested skepticism more than admiration. After Michael left, Vincent approached Grace. "Sorry about my brother, he's protective of the family. I understand, but I need it to be clear. If my presence here is going to cause problems or unnecessary tensions, maybe it's better to reconsider." "No," Vincent said firmly, "you stay. Michael will get used to it." That afternoon, Grace established a structured routine for the twins. She created a detailed schedule that included feeding times, therapeutic exercises, sensory stimulation periods, and rest. Each activity was carefully planned to maximize the children's neurological development. "Consistency is fundamental," she explained to Isabella, while demonstrating range of motion exercises with Antonio. "Their brains are learning to form new connections. The more we repeat these movements and stimuli, the stronger those connections become." Isabella watched attentively, occasionally taking notes in a notebook she had started keeping. "How long will it take to see progress?" "Each child is different, but we usually start seeing small improvements in a few weeks. Bigger milestones can take months or even years. The important thing is to celebrate each small victory." At 5 in the afternoon, Grace was preparing to end her first day when Giuseppe started crying again. This time, however, Isabella stepped forward, applying the techniques she had learned during the day. To her joy, she managed to calm the baby in just a few minutes. "I did it!" she exclaimed with tears of happiness in her eyes. "You did," Grace smiled. "And this is just the beginning." Vincent, who had observed the scene from the doorway, felt an emotion he couldn't name. For the first time since his children's birth, he saw genuine hope in his wife's face. And for the first time, he began to believe that maybe his children could have a full and happy life, despite the challenges. As Grace prepared to leave, she turned to Vincent and Isabella. "Tomorrow we'll start working with more specialized equipment. I'll bring some therapeutic toys and positioning devices. I'd also like to schedule appointments with a physical therapist and an occupational therapist." "Do whatever is necessary," Vincent said. "Cost is no problem. It's not just about money, Mr. Torino. It's about love, patience, and dedication. And from what I saw today, you have all of that in abundance." As Grace drove home through Providence's streets, she reflected on the first day. The Torino family was more complex than she had imagined. Vincent was clearly a man accustomed to control and power, but he was also a father desperately worried about his children's welfare. Isabella was more fragile, but had an inner strength that was just beginning to emerge. And the twins, they had potential. She could feel it. What Grace didn't know was that her arrival had initiated a series of changes that would extend far beyond the baby's medical care. In the Torino house, where family traditions and codes of honor had been passed down from generation to generation, the presence of a strong, independent Black woman was beginning to challenge perceptions and prejudices that even they didn't know they possessed. Meanwhile, in his office, Vincent looked out the window at the garden where Grace had parked her car during the day. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't thinking about his business problems or the pressures of leading a crime family. He was thinking about his children and the possibility that they could have a future he had never dared imagine. The second day had planted seeds of change that would grow in ways none of them could predict. 2 weeks had passed since Grace began working at the Torino mansion, and the transformation was undeniable. The twins were calmer, sleeping better, and responding positively to therapeutic exercises. Isabella had regained her confidence as a mother, and even Vincent seemed less tense when he was home. It was a particularly cold November morning when Grace arrived to find the house in an unusual state of agitation. Marco received her at the door with a worried expression. "Mrs. Washington, the boss wants to talk to you before you go up to see the children," he said, quickly leading her to the office. Vincent was on the phone, speaking in Italian in a low but urgent tone. When he saw Grace, he gestured for her to sit and ended the call abruptly. "We have a problem," he said, running his hands through his hair. "I need to travel to Boston today. Urgent business that I can't postpone. Isabella still isn't feeling well enough to be alone with the boys for several days." Grace nodded, understanding the situation. "How long will you be away?" "At least 3 days, maybe a week. I know it's not part of our agreement, but would it be possible for you to stay here during this period? I can pay overtime, of course." "It's no problem, Mr. Torino. The children need consistency in their care. I can stay." Vincent seemed genuinely relieved. "Thank you. Marco will stay here too in case you need anything. And there's a complete security system in the house." An hour later, Vincent had left in his black Mercedes, leaving Grace effectively responsible for the entire family's welfare. Isabella was having a particularly difficult day, still recovering from childbirth and dealing with what Grace suspected was postpartum depression. "Mrs. Torino, how about we have some tea and talk?" Grace suggested after putting the twins down for a morning nap. They sat in the kitchen, a surprisingly cozy environment with cherry cabinets and a large central island where Grace had prepared chamomile tea. Isabella seemed fragile, wrapped in a silk robe that made her appear even smaller. "Can I ask a personal question?" Isabella said, stirring her tea without really drinking it. "Of course. How do you manage to be so strong? After losing your son, how did you find the strength to continue caring for other children?" Grace was silent for a moment, carefully choosing her words. "At first I couldn't. After Marcus died, I went almost a year without working. I couldn't even look at other children without falling apart. What changed? A friend took me to do volunteer work at an orphanage. There was a girl there, Sarah, who had Down syndrome. She was being rejected by all the families who came looking for children to adopt. One day she looked at me and said, 'You're sad like me. Do you want to be my friend?' Isabella smiled for the first time in days. 'And did you become friends?' More than that. She taught me that the pain of loss doesn't have to be wasted. It can be transformed into compassion, into strength to help others. Marcus wouldn't come back, but I could honor his memory by caring for other children who needed love. Sometimes I feel like I'm not strong enough to be Antonio and Giuseppe's mother," Isabella confessed. "When I see other mothers with normal babies, I feel envious. And then I feel guilty for feeling envious." "That's completely normal," Grace said, covering Isabella's hand with hers. "Grief is a process, and you're grieving for the life you imagined you'd have with your children. But I can guarantee you one thing. Antonio and Giuseppe will teach you about love in a way you never imagined possible." That afternoon, while Grace worked with the twins on sensory stimulation exercises, Isabella watched attentively. For the first time, she really paid attention to the small progress that was happening. "Look," Grace said softly. "Giuseppe is trying to follow the sound of the rattle with his eyes." Isabella approached and saw it was true. The baby was making a conscious effort to track the movement of the colorful toy that Grace was slowly moving from side to side. "Is that good?" "It's excellent. It means neurological connections are forming. He's learning to coordinate vision and hearing." Isabella felt tears of joy in her eyes. "Can I try?" Grace handed the rattle to Isabella, who repeated the movement. Giuseppe responded the same way, his bright blue eyes following the toy with determined concentration. "My smart boy," Isabella murmured, gently kissing her son's forehead. That night after the children were sleeping, Grace and Isabella had dinner together in the kitchen. It was the first time Isabella had eaten a complete meal in weeks. "Grace, can I ask you something about Vincent? What would you like to know? Aren't you afraid of him? Of what he does?" Grace considered the question carefully. I have respect for him. I see a man who deeply loves his family and would do anything to protect it. As for the rest, it's not my responsibility to judge the choices people make. But you must have an opinion. My opinion is that people are complex. Your husband may be many things in the world out there, but here, in this house, he's a worried father who wants the best for his children. That's the version of him I know and work with. Isabella nodded slowly. Sometimes I forget that version of him exists. In recent years, he became so involved with business that I rarely see the man I fell in love with. Maybe the boys will bring that version back, Grace suggested. Children have a way of reminding us what really matters. The next morning, Grace was awakened by an unusual sound coming from the baby's room. It was only 5 in the morning, but she could hear Giuseppe making sounds that weren't crying. They were almost like attempts at communication. She got up quickly and went to check, finding Giuseppe awake and alert, making small noises while moving his arms more coordinatedly than usual. "Good morning, little prince," she said softly, approaching the crib. "Are you trying to tell me something?" Giuseppe looked at her directly and made more sounds, almost as if he were responding. Grace felt her heart race. This was a form of communication she hadn't seen before. "Isabella," she called softly. "Come see this." Isabella appeared at the door, still sleepy. "What happened?" "Giuseppe is trying to communicate. Look." Grace leaned over the crib and spoke to Giuseppe, who responded with a series of different sounds, his eyes bright and focused on her face. "My God," Isabella whispered. "He's really trying to talk to you. Not exactly talk, but definitely communicate. This is an important milestone in his development." Isabella approached the crib and tried the same thing. Giuseppe looked at her and after a moment made similar sounds. "He recognizes me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "He knows I'm his mother. Of course he knows. And look at Antonio." They turned to the other crib, where Antonio was also awake, watching the interaction with interest. When Grace approached him, he smiled, a genuine and conscious smile. "They're progressing faster than I expected," Grace said, barely able to contain her own emotion. "This is wonderful." That morning, Isabella actively participated in all therapeutic exercises for the first time. She followed Grace's instructions with growing confidence, celebrating each small response from the twins. "You know," Isabella said while feeding Antonio, "I think I'm starting to understand what you meant about them teaching me about love." "How so?" "When Giuseppe tried to communicate this morning, I felt a joy I'd never experienced before. It wasn't just happiness, it was pure love. Love without conditions, without expectations. Just love for what he is, exactly as he is." Grace smiled. "Now you're beginning to understand. That's the gift that children like Antonio and Giuseppe give us. They teach us that true love has nothing to do with perfection or expectations. It's about accepting and celebrating each person exactly as they are." That afternoon, Michael Torino appeared unexpectedly. Grace was in the back garden with the twins, taking advantage of November's weak sun for an outdoor therapy session when he arrived. "Mrs. Washington," he said, his voice carrying the same coldness as before, "where is my sister-in-law? Mrs. Torino is resting. Can I help you with something?" Michael looked at the babies who were lying on special blankets on the lawn, participating in visual stimulation exercises with colorful toys. "What are you doing out here? Isn't it too cold for them? Controlled exposure to fresh air and natural light is beneficial for neurological development," Grace explained patiently. "They're adequately warmed and protected." Michael approached and observed Giuseppe, who was trying to reach a toy suspended above him. "He's better?" "Both are progressing well. Giuseppe is developing better visual motor coordination, and Antonio is showing signs of greater social awareness." "Do you really believe they can improve?" Grace heard something different in Michael's voice. No longer coldness, but genuine curiosity mixed with something that seemed like hope. "Mr. Torino, cerebral palsy isn't something you cure, but with adequate therapy and love, children with this condition can achieve much more than most people imagine. I've seen children that doctors said would never walk running in parks. I've seen children who supposedly would never speak graduating from university. Michael was silent for a long moment, watching the twins. My brother. He's always been the strong one in the family. Seeing him so worried, so lost, it was difficult. And now, for the first time in weeks, he seems to have hope. Isabella too, and I can see why. At that moment, Giuseppe managed to touch the toy he was trying to reach, making sounds of satisfaction. Michael smiled involuntarily. He's determined, isn't he? Very. Both are. They have the Torino family strength. Michael looked at Grace with an expression she hadn't seen before. Respect. Mrs. Washington, I owe you an apology. When Vincent said he had hired you, I had prejudices. I was wrong. Thank you for saying that, Mr. Torino. But I understand your protection of the family. It's admirable. Can I ask a question? Why did you choose to work for us? You must have other options. Grace considered the question. Because I saw something special in this family. I saw parents who love their children unconditionally and are willing to do anything for them. And I saw two small children who deserve all the opportunities in the world. When Vincent returned from Boston 3 days later, he found a transformed house. Isabella was in the living room, confidently playing with the twins, while Grace organized therapeutic equipment. The sound of laughter, something that hadn't been heard in the house for weeks, echoed through the corridors. How did things go? He asked Grace, observing the scene with admiration. Very well. The boys made significant progress, and your wife is becoming an incredible mother. Vincent looked at Isabella, who was softly singing to Antonio while doing range of motion exercises with his small legs. She seemed like a completely different person, confident, happy, radiant. What happened while I was away? They started communicating, Isabella said, looking up with a bright smile. Giuseppe is making intentional sounds, and Antonio is really smiling. Grace says they're progressing faster than expected. Vincent felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time, pure and simple pride in his children. That's incredible. And there's more, Isabella continued. Your brother came to visit us. He and Grace had a good conversation. I think he finally understands why you hired her. That night after Grace had gone home, Vincent and Isabella had dinner together for the first time in months. They talked about the twins' progress, about plans for the future, and about how their lives had changed. Vincent, Isabella said, taking her husband's hand, I know your business is important, but can you try to be more present? The boys need their father, and I need my husband. Vincent looked into his wife's eyes and saw not only love, but also a strength that hadn't been there before. You're right. I'll make changes. Family comes first. Meanwhile, in her small house in South Side, Grace was sitting in her kitchen, updating her notes on the twins' progress. But her thoughts went beyond medical milestones. She was thinking about how this family was changing. Not just the babies, but all of them. Vincent was learning that being strong didn't mean carrying everything alone. Isabella was discovering an inner strength she didn't know she possessed. And even Michael was beginning to see beyond his prejudices. What Grace didn't know was that her influence was extending far beyond the walls of the Torino mansion. The changes she had initiated were creating waves that would soon reach aspects of Vincent's life she had never imagined. The third chapter of her journey with the Torino family was ending, but the real transformation was just beginning. Winter arrived early in Providence that year, bringing with it a snowstorm that covered the city with a white blanket almost 2 feet deep. It was December, and Grace had been working with the Torino family for 2 months. The twins' progress was remarkable. Giuseppe could now hold his head up for longer periods and was developing better arm movement control, while Antonio showed clear signs of facial recognition and was trying to imitate sounds. That Friday morning, Grace arrived to find the house in an unusual state of preparation. Men she didn't recognize were checking security systems, and Marco seemed more tense than usual. Good morning, Marco. Is everything okay? Good morning, Mrs. Washington. We have important visitors arriving today. The boss wants you to keep the children on the second floor during the afternoon. Grace nodded, understanding she shouldn't ask questions. She had learned to navigate the darker aspects of the Torino's life by staying focused on her work and not getting involved in matters that didn't concern her. Going up to the baby's room, she found Isabella visibly nervous. pacing back and forth while the twins slept peacefully in their cribs. "Isabella, is everything okay? Vincent is receiving some associates today. Important business meeting. He said it would be better if we stayed away." Grace perceived the tension in Isabella's voice and decided the best strategy would be to maintain the normal routine as much as possible. "How about we take advantage to work on those coordination exercises we discussed? It'll keep us busy." During the morning, Grace worked intensively with the twins while teaching Isabella new cognitive stimulation techniques. They were so concentrated, they barely noticed the sound of cars arriving at the front entrance. Around noon, Giuseppe was having a particularly good day. He had managed to hold a toy for almost 5 minutes, a personal record, and was making sounds that approached real syllables. "Look at this, Isabella," Grace said, positioning a colorful mirror in front of Giuseppe. "He's trying to reach his own reflection." Isabella leaned in to observe better. "Does this mean he recognizes himself?" "Not yet, but it's the beginning of self-awareness development. It's a very important milestone." They were so absorbed watching Giuseppe that they didn't hear the heavy footsteps coming up the stairs until the door opened abruptly. Vincent entered the room, followed by a man Grace had never seen before. He was tall, about 50 years old, with graying hair slicked back and a suit that seemed to have cost more than Grace's car. His eyes were cold and calculating, and there was an aura of authority around him that made the air seem heavier. "Isabella, Grace, this is Salvatore Benedetti," Vincent said, his voice carrying a formality Grace rarely heard. "Sal, this is my wife Isabella, and Grace Washington, the nurse who takes care of the boys." Salvatore nodded to Isabella with respect, but when his eyes turned to Grace, she felt immediate discomfort. It wasn't just distrust, it was something deeper, more visceral. "So this is the famous nurse," Salvatore said, his voice carrying a Brooklyn accent. "Vincent told me a lot about you, Mrs. Washington. I hope good things," Grace replied, keeping her voice neutral. Salvatore approached the cribs, observing the twins with interest. "And these are the little princes. How are they developing?" "Very well," Grace said, instinctively moving to stand between Salvatore and the babies. "They're making significant progress." "Interesting," Salvatore murmured, his eyes still fixed on the children. "Vincent, can we talk privately?" Vincent hesitated, looking at Grace and Isabella. "Of course. Let's go to the office." After the men left, Isabella approached Grace. "Who is that man? Vincent has never brought anyone here before." "I don't know, but something about him makes me uncomfortable," Grace admitted. "Let's keep the children up here until he leaves." During the next hour, Grace and Isabella maintained a normal routine, but both were tense. Occasionally, they could hear voices coming from the office downstairs. Not the words, but the tone of the conversations seemed intense. Around 3 in the afternoon, Giuseppe began to get agitated. Grace tried all the usual techniques to calm him, but nothing worked. He was crying in a way she hadn't heard before. It wasn't physical pain, but something more like anxiety. He might be feeling the tension in the house, Grace explained to Isabella. Babies are very sensitive to the emotional energy around them. Isabella picked up Giuseppe, trying to calm him, but he continued crying. Antonio also began to get restless, as if he were reacting to his brother's discomfort. "I'll prepare a warm bath for them," Grace said. "Sometimes water helps them relax." She was filling the baby's special bathtub when she heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs again. This time, it was just Salvatore, without Vincent. "Mrs. Washington," he said, appearing at the bathroom door. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" Grace felt all her protective instincts activate. "Of course, but I need to finish preparing the bath for the children." "That can wait." It wasn't a request. Grace dried her hands and followed Salvatore to the hallway, keeping the bedroom door open so she could see Isabella and the babies. "Mrs. Washington, I understand you've become important to this family." "I take care of the Torino children. It's my job." "Yes, your job. But sometimes people in your position can see or hear things they shouldn't, things that could be misinterpreted." Grace looked at him directly. "Mr. Benedetti, I don't know what you're insinuating, but I can assure you that my only interest here is Antonio and Giuseppe. I don't get involved in matters that don't concern me." That's good to hear, because it would be a shame if something happened to such a dedicated nurse. The threat was subtle but clear. Grace felt her heart race, but kept her voice firm. I understand perfectly, Mr. Benedetti. At that moment, Vincent appeared at the top of the stairs. Sal, is everything okay here? Perfectly. I was just getting to know Mrs. Washington better. She seems very professional. Vincent looked between the two, clearly perceiving the tension in the air. Grace, how are the boys? Giuseppe was a little agitated, but he's better now, she said, quickly returning to the room. Salvatore and Vincent went downstairs, and Grace heard the front door close about 20 minutes later. She waited a few more minutes before going down to look for Vincent. She found him in his office, sitting behind the desk with his head in his hands. He seemed to have aged years in one afternoon. Mr. Torino, can I speak with you? Vincent lifted his head. Of course, Grace. Come in and close the door. Grace sat in the chair in front of the desk. I need to know if my presence here is causing problems for your family. Why do you ask that? Mr. Benedetti made it clear that my position here is delicate. If my presence is creating complications for you, maybe it's better if I look for another job. Vincent stood up and went to the window. Grace, you've transformed our lives. Isabella is happy for the first time in months. The boys are progressing beyond our most optimistic expectations. I won't let anyone change that. But if this is causing problems with your associates, let me deal with my associates, Vincent said, turning to face her. You're part of this family now, and I protect my family. Grace felt a mixture of relief and concern. Thank you, Mr. Torino. But I need you to know, if my presence ever puts Antonio and Giuseppe in danger, I leave immediately. That will never happen. You have my word. That night, after Grace had gone home, Vincent had a difficult conversation with Isabella about Salvatore's visit. He didn't like Grace being here, Vincent admitted. He thinks it's a security risk to have a stranger so close to the family. And what did you say? That Grace isn't a stranger. She's part of our family now. Isabella took her husband's hand. Vincent, you know I support any decision you make. But I need you to understand. Grace isn't just an employee to me. She's become a friend, a sister. She taught me how to be a mother to our children. I know, amore, and that's why she stays. Even if it causes problems with the others? Vincent looked toward the baby's room where he could hear the soft sounds of the twins sleeping. Isabella, for years I made choices based on what was best for business, for the family in the traditional sense. But look at what Grace has brought to our lives. Look at how our children are flourishing. Some things are more important than politics and tradition. The following week, Grace noticed subtle changes in the house dynamics. There were more security men around the property, and Vincent seemed more cautious, more protective. But he was also more present with the family, spending more time with the twins and supporting Isabella in ways Grace hadn't seen before. One morning, while working with Antonio on motor coordination exercises, Grace noticed he was trying to imitate the movements she made with her hands. Isabella, come see this, she called excitedly. Isabella approached and watched as Grace moved her hands slowly, and Antonio tried to copy the movements with his own arms. He's imitating you. Yes, this means he's developing observational learning skills. It's an important cognitive milestone. They were so absorbed celebrating Antonio's progress that they didn't notice Vincent standing in the doorway, watching the scene with an expression of pure happiness. My boys are becoming little geniuses, he said, entering the room. They're incredible, Grace agreed. Giuseppe is also making progress. Yesterday he managed to transfer a toy from one hand to the other. Vincent knelt beside Giuseppe's crib and spoke softly in Italian. To everyone's surprise, Giuseppe responded with sounds that almost seemed like an attempt to imitate his father's speech rhythm. My God, Vincent whispered. He's trying to speak Italian. Children absorb language patterns very early, Grace explained. If you continue speaking Italian with them, there's a good chance they'll develop bilingual skills. At that moment, Vincent made a decision that would change the course of their lives. Grace, I want to make you a proposal. What kind of proposal? I want you to move here, permanently. We have guest rooms on the 3rd floor, that can be converted into a private apartment for you. Double salary, all benefits, and you'd have total autonomy over the boys' care." Grace was silent, processing the offer. "Mr. Torino, that's very generous, but living here would fundamentally change our professional relationship. And after Mr. Benedetti's visit, I'm not sure it's wise for me to become even more integrated into your family." Isabella approached. "Grace, you're already part of our family. Living here would just make it official. What about the risks?" Vincent looked directly into her eyes. "Grace, I'll be completely honest with you. My life has risks. It always has. But I can guarantee that you and my children will be protected. I have resources and influence that most people don't have." Grace looked at the twins, who were playing peacefully in their cribs, then at Isabella, who watched her with hope, and finally at Vincent, who awaited her answer with an intensity she had rarely seen. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course, take all the time you need." That night, Grace drove home through Providence's snow-covered streets, her mind buzzing with thoughts and possibilities. Vincent's offer was tempting, not just financially, but emotionally. She had become attached to the twins in a way she hadn't expected, and the idea of being available to them 24 hours a day was attractive. But there were risks. Salvatore's visit had made it clear that not everyone approved of her presence in the Torino's life, and living in the house would make it impossible to maintain the professional distance that had been her protection. As she prepared for bed, Grace looked at Marcus's photo on her nightstand. "What would you do, my love?" she whispered to her son's image. She could almost hear his answer. "Mom, you always told me that love is worth any risk. Antonio and Giuseppe need you, and you need them too." The next morning, Grace arrived at the Torino mansion with her decision made. She found Vincent in his office talking on the phone in Italian. When he saw her, he quickly ended the call. "Grace, good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you." "Mr. Torino, I thought about your offer." Vincent stood up, his expression expectant. "And? I accept, but with some conditions." "What conditions?" "First, I want total autonomy over the twins' medical and therapeutic care. Second, if I ever feel that my presence is putting the children in danger, I'll leave immediately without discussion. And third, I want Isabella to agree to the arrangement. She needs to feel comfortable having another woman living in her house." Vincent smiled, the first genuine smile Grace had seen from him in weeks. "All conditions are acceptable, and I can guarantee Isabella will be delighted." "Then we have a deal." Vincent extended his hand, and Grace shook it firmly. Neither of them could imagine how this decision would change not only their lives, but also the future of the entire Torino family. The fourth chapter of their journey was ending, but the most transformative was yet to come. Grace Washington was about to become more than an employee or even a family friend. She was about to become the force that would change the heart of an empire, built on traditions that had never been questioned. 6 months had passed since Grace moved into the Torino mansion, and the transformation was evident in every aspect of family life. It was a May morning in 2020, and the property's gardens were blooming with tulips and daffodils that Grace had helped Isabella plant the previous autumn. The mansion's third floor had been converted into an elegant and comfortable apartment for Grace, with a view of the back garden and direct access to the twins' room through an internal staircase. Antonio and Giuseppe, now 8 months old, had exceeded all medical expectations. Giuseppe could sit with support for prolonged periods and was developing grasping skills that doctors said might never happen. Antonio, while still facing motor coordination challenges, had developed remarkable social skills and responded to his name with radiant smiles and vocalizations that increasingly approached real words. That specific morning, Grace was in the back garden with the twins, taking advantage of the spring sun for an outdoor therapy session, when Vincent approached with an expression she had learned to recognize. He had something important to discuss. "Grace, can I speak with you for a moment?" "Of course. The boys are safe here in the playpen." Vincent sat on the garden bench beside her, watching the twins playing with colorful toys specially designed for their developmental needs. "I need to tell you something that might change our situation here." Grace felt a pang of concern. "What happened?" Salvatore Benedetti is pressuring me to make changes in the organization. He thinks I'm becoming too soft, that my dedication to family is compromising my leadership in business. And do you agree with him? Vincent was silent for a long moment, watching Giuseppe trying to reach a musical toy. Grace, in recent months, watching you work with my children, seeing Isabella's transformation, actually participating in my family's life, I've started questioning many things about the life I built. What kind of things? The legacy I'm leaving for Antonio and Giuseppe, the kind of man I want to be for them. Whether it's worth maintaining an empire built on fear and violence, if it means my children will grow up in a world where they always have to look over their shoulders. Grace chose her words carefully. Mr. Torino, it's not my place to judge your professional choices, but I can say that as a father, you've become a completely different man in recent months. How so? You're present, really present. When you're with Antonio and Giuseppe, I see a man who has found his true purpose. You speak to them in Italian, sing lullabies that your grandmother used to sing, and your eyes light up when they make progress. That's the Vincent Torino your children will remember. Vincent stood up and walked to the playpen, kneeling beside Giuseppe. The baby immediately extended his arms toward his father, making cheerful sounds of recognition. "Papa!" Giuseppe babbled clearly, his first recognizable word. Vincent froze. He said Papa? He did, Grace confirmed, tears in her eyes. His first word. Vincent picked up Giuseppe, holding him against his chest while tears streamed down his face. My boy, my brave boy. Antonio, not wanting to be left out, extended his arms and made insistent sounds until Vincent picked him up too, holding both twins. Grace, he said, his voice choked with emotion. These boys deserve a father they can be proud of. A father who doesn't have to hide what he does for a living. What are you saying? I'm saying it's time to make changes. Real changes. That afternoon, while Grace worked with the twins on motor development exercises, Isabella joined them in the living room. She had transformed completely in recent months, not just physically, recovering her strength and vitality, but emotionally. She had become a confident and dedicated mother, and her friendship with Grace had deepened into something that transcended differences of race, social class, or background. Grace, Vincent told me about your conversation this morning, Isabella said, sitting on the carpet beside Antonio. He's going through a difficult time, Grace observed. Being a father has changed his perspective on many things. It has. And it's not just him. I've changed too. Before the boys were born, I lived in a golden bubble. I vaguely knew about Vincent's business, but never questioned anything. Now looking at Antonio and Giuseppe, thinking about the world they'll grow up in, I want something different for them. What kind of different? Isabella picked up Antonio, kissing his forehead. I want them to grow up in a world where they don't have to be afraid, where they can make friends without me worrying about people's motivations, where they can go to school, to university, have normal careers if they want. And Vincent agrees with this. More than agrees. He's planning changes that will shock many people. That night, after the twins were sleeping, Grace was invited to dinner with Vincent and Isabella, something that had become a tradition in recent months. They sat in the formal dining room, but the atmosphere was intimate and familiar. Grace, Vincent said, serving wine for the women, I want you to know that the changes I'm considering won't affect your position here. Actually, they'll make it even more important. What kind of changes? Vincent took a deep breath. I'm planning to gradually withdraw from the more problematic aspects of the family business. I'll focus on legitimate operations, construction, restaurants, real estate investments. It'll take time and it won't be easy, but it's what needs to be done. Grace was silent, processing the magnitude of what he was saying. Mr. Torino, that's a very courageous decision, but also very dangerous. I know. That's why I need your help. My help? How? You've become more than a nurse to this family, Grace. You've become our moral conscience. Isabella sees you as a sister. The boys love you like a second mother. And I see you as the person who showed us who we really can be. Isabella took Grace's hand. What Vincent is trying to say is that we want you to be the boys' godmother. Officially. Grace felt her heart race. Are you sure about this? Do you know what this means? It means you'd be legally responsible for them if something happened to us, Vincent said. It means you'd have a voice in all important decisions about their lives. It means you'd be family for real, not just in heart, but in the eyes of the law. Grace looked at both of them, seeing the sincerity and love in their faces. It would be an honor, but you need to understand that accepting this means I'll protect Antonio and Giuseppe above everything. If I ever feel they're in danger because of your choices, I'll do whatever is necessary to keep them safe. We wouldn't expect anything less, Vincent said. That's exactly why we want you in this position. 2 weeks later, Grace was in a lawyer's office in downtown Providence, signing documents that officially made her the twins' legal guardian in case of emergency. Vincent had insisted on using the city's best law firm, and Grace was impressed with the document's thoroughness. "Mrs. Washington," said the lawyer, a distinguished man with gray hair, "these documents give you significant legal authority. Are you sure you understand the responsibilities involved?" "Perfectly," Grace replied, signing her name with a steady hand. When they left the office, Vincent turned to Grace. "Thank you. I know this wasn't an easy decision. Actually, it was. Antonio and Giuseppe are already my children in everything except blood. Now it's official." That afternoon, they returned home to find a scene that filled Grace's heart with joy. Isabella was in the garden with the twins, and Giuseppe was doing something doctors said might never happen. He was crawling. "Vincent, Grace, come see!" Isabella shouted excitedly. They ran to the garden where Giuseppe was moving slowly but determinedly toward a colorful toy about 3 feet away. His movements were uncoordinated and required tremendous effort, but he was moving on his own. "My God," Vincent whispered, kneeling on the grass. "Giuseppe, come to Papa." Giuseppe looked at his father, and with visible determination in his blue eyes, continued moving toward him. When he finally reached Vincent's arms, the whole family was crying with joy. "This is impossible," Isabella said. "The doctors said he'd never be able to move independently." "The doctors were wrong," Grace said, her voice full of pride. "Giuseppe is a fighter, both of them are." That night, after an impromptu celebration with champagne, apple juice for Grace, who didn't drink, and Isabella's favorite cake, Vincent asked to speak with Grace privately. They sat on the back porch, watching the stars shining over Providence. "Grace, I need to tell you something that might change everything." "What is it?" "Salvatore has scheduled a meeting for next week. He wants me to make a final decision about the family's direction. Either I return to the old methods or he'll consider it an abdication of leadership. And when that happens in our line of work, the consequences can be severe." Grace felt a chill in her stomach. "Are you in danger?" "Possibly. But it's not about me. It's about you, about Isabella and the boys. If something happens to me, you need to be prepared." "Vincent, don't talk like that." "I have to." "Grace, if something happens to me, I want you to take Isabella and the boys and leave. I have bank accounts under other names, properties that Salvatore doesn't know about. You'll be financially secure." Grace looked directly into his eyes. "And what if I say I won't let you face this alone?" Vincent smiled sadly. "I'd say you're exactly the person I hoped you'd be. But Grace, my fight isn't your fight. You're wrong. Antonio and Giuseppe are my children now. Isabella is my sister. And you've become the family I never thought I'd have again. Your fight is my fight." The following week, tension in the house was palpable. Vincent was more protective than ever, and Grace noticed a significant increase in security around the property. Isabella tried to maintain a normal facade for the twins, but Grace could see the fear in her eyes. On the morning of the meeting with Salvatore, Vincent dressed in his best suit and spent extra time with the twins. Giuseppe had started saying "Papa" regularly, and Antonio was making remarkable progress in his communication skills. "Whatever the outcome of today's meeting," Vincent said to Grace, "I want you to know that you gave us the greatest gift possible. You showed us who we really are when we take off all the masks." "Vincent," Grace said, taking his hands, "be brave today, but be smart too. Your children need their father." Vincent kissed Grace's forehead, a paternal gesture that surprised and moved her. "Take care of them if I don't come back." "You will come back," she said firmly, "because I'll be here waiting, and Antonio and Giuseppe will be waiting, and Isabella will be waiting, and families don't give up on each other." As Vincent left for the meeting that could change the course of their lives, Grace sat in the twins' room, watching them play. Giuseppe was trying to stack colored blocks, his concentration intense and determined. Antonio was reading a picture book, making sounds that imitated speech rhythm. "Your parents are brave people," she said softly to them, "and you'll grow up to be brave too. No matter what happens, you'll always have love. You'll always have family." Giuseppe looked at her and smiled, extending his arms. Grace picked him up, feeling the weight of responsibility and love she had taken on. She had entered the Torino's life as a nurse hired to care for 2 children with special needs. Now, she was the guardian of a family that had found the courage to change, the heart of an empire that was learning that true power came from love, not fear. The 5th and final chapter of her journey with the Torino family was unfolding. But Grace knew that regardless of what happened that day, they had created something that transcended blood, race, or tradition. They had created a true family, built on unconditional love and the courage to change. And as she waited for Vincent to return, Grace held the twins and whispered a silent prayer, not just for his safety, but for the strength to face any challenge the future might bring. Because now she knew, without a shadow of doubt, that love was truly stronger than any tradition, any prejudice, any fear. The transformation was complete. The nurse who had arrived to care for 2 children had become the force that saved an entire family, showing them that true strength didn't come from power over others, but from the love they shared with each other.